Hi, and welcome to video 3 of the Absolute Beginner for Maya Series 2, where we're talking about working with Polygon primitives. In videos 1 and 2, we've talked about navigation, creating Polygon primitives, move, scale, and rotate, and how to duplicate those objects. In this third video, we're going to look at the pivot points of primitive objects, how moving those affects how you can rotate and scale an object. We're going to open up the outliner, look at how you can name and organize your scene, and talk about grouping and parenting. So let's get started. First, let's talk about pivot points. So I'm going to go ahead and create an object here, a cube. And as you notice, if I hit W, that's your move, and I'm going to hit E for rotate. As I rotate, it is rotating this object about a point in the center. That is the same point from which we move it, and that's listed here. That point's called a pivot point, and that can be changed. So to move the pivot point of an object, you want to hit the home key. And what that does, it's going to change your manipulator so it looks like that. A bit different, and as I move this manipulator, you notice the object's not moving. It just that center point, the little target with the square. And now if I rotate, I'm hitting E, it's rotating about this new point. And when I scale, it's scaling not from the center but from that new point. So I'm going to undo that till it's back in the center. If I wanted to move that to a specific point, I would want to use one of the snapping features. So I'm going to hit home, and now I know, okay, this symbol means I'm moving the pivot point, not the object. And before we had used X, which snapped to grid. You see how that works. But if I want to snap to a point or to a curve, I can hold down the V key, and that'll snap to a vertex. A vertex are these points on the corners here. Now, if I'm using this manipulator handle here, it's going to pull in the X direction, so it's not going to snap to that point, but it'll snap on the same plane as that point. Let me show you. So holding down V, and I pull it, and it snapped to that plane. You can see that. I'm going to pop to the side view, and notice how it popped to that plane. I can hit down V again and pop it to the corner, and go to a side view and pop it to the corner. And now when I scale, I'm hitting R to the shortcut key. I'm scaling from this bottom corner. So that's how you would move a pivot point. Next is naming in the outliner. The outliner is a window that shows the objects in your scene and allows you to organize them. So if you go to these layouts here, there's one, the third one down, this is your four view, this is your single view. The third one down here is your perspective view with the outliner. This is the outliner. You can have a detached outliner if you just go to Windows Outliner. You only have one at the time, so it kind of stole that one when we did that. But I'm going to go back here. And as you see, the outliner shows the different cameras, which are objects in the scene. It shows us P-Cube1. And P-Cube1, if I select this, this is the name of this object, the default name the computer gave us. We can click here, and we can rename this we can rename that. I'm going to say it my tall cube. And as we renamed it here, it also renamed it here in the channel box. I'm going to duplicate that, and notice as I duplicated it, it gave it another default name. It named it the same thing and added a number at the end. So if I create a pipe, it's going to have its own default name. I can change that to what is that? A donut, flat donut, whatever. So that's the outliner, and that is naming. Now you can select things through the outliner, which is kind of neat. So I can, if there's, well, what if I was really far away? And I said, I really just want to select that flat donut and frame it. So I can select it here in the outliner, hit F on the scene, and it brings it to full view. So you can use it to select. You can also organize hierarchies. For example, this comes into the idea of parenting, where suppose this is a boat and these are people on the boat. Right now there's no relationship between these objects. I'll turn off snapping. I'm going to put them on the end so they're not falling through here. If the boat goes somewhere, the people don't go along. Now, if in this hierarchical term, if the people were parented to the boat, then wherever the boat went, the people would go. So, the way you set up a relationship like that is you select the child, and then you shift select the parent, and you hit P. And notice in the outliner what happens. I hit P, and it adds this plus symbol. And the parent you still see, but you don't see the other one. It disappeared. And I can do the same thing for this one and hit shift and hit P, and it's gone. But if you notice, you open up the plus symbol, and now my tall cube and tall cube 1, my tall cube 1 are children of flat donut. And that means that anywhere this boat goes, even when it's rotated around, those other ones are going to go with it. This means I could animate this separately. And these can still be selected and moved independently. For example, a person on a boat could still walk up to the rails. They could do cartwheels or whatever they want to do. They're moving. That's great, but they're moving with the boat. I can unparent objects by just clicking this and do Shift P, and notice that took that out of the hierarchy. I can also, in the outliner, middle mouse click and drag that out. So I can set up parenting relationships just by middle mouse dragging or unparenting. So I can middle mouse drag this and put it on flat donut, and it creates that relationship. I can middle mouse drag, take it out, or you can do the P and Shift P like I showed. Now that's parenting. Grouping is very similar, where I can take these three objects and I can group them by doing a Command G, or I would have to look this up. This would be a good place to use my find menus. So group, and it looks like it's an edit group. So if you go to edit, there it is, group. And you notice now we have something we haven't seen, group 1. So what it did, it actually created a new node, but this new node has no geometry at all. But it does have a translate, rotate, and scale. And I can scale things, and it always creates that pivot point at the origin, or the 0, 0, 0, and X, Y, and Z. Now, what if I didn't want it at 0, 0, 0? So often when you create a group, either you construct what you're going to group at the origin, so its center is already at the origin, so when you create the group, the pivot point's in the right place, or you can go and you can go to modify, where is it? Center pivot. And that put that pivot in this space here. Now it's not on the ground plane, but it's kind of central on the object. If I wanted it low, we could go to the four-view home, and I'm holding now the V and snap that to the bottom. So now in the outliner, it gives me an extra node that I can move, scale, and rotate that's independent of these. These each still have their rotations, but they're separate from the group. So that's in a nutshell, grouping and parenting. Here's the outliner. It's a good place to look at your objects and your scene. You can create relationships here. You can rename things here. And that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching.